Well, hello and welcome again to Elevenses. I'm Kevin Williams of Survival Skills Rider Training. This is my regular webcast, Elevenses. It's show number 156 and it's Wednesday the 21st of July, and outside it is another hot and cloudless day. The temperature is already soaring into the high 20s here in London. So what have we got for you on today's show? Well, the DVSA have revised the A2 test bike requirement, which basically means that 250s will now be able to be used for the intermediate bike test. MAG have made their statement on the government's Decarbonisation Plan that I mentioned last week. A thief tried to wheel away a bike after a rider was involved in a crash and taken to hospital. The best-selling middleweight motorcycle in New Zealand might surprise you, and we'll look at some new triples from Benelli and Zontes. So that's what's in the show. Settle yourself down with a cup of tea or something for the next 25 minutes or so, and don't forget you can join me every Wednesdays and Sundays here at 11 o'clock. If you have a comment or a question, do drop me a line, say hi, and I'll try and get back to you while we're running the show. If I can't, I'll certainly get back to you at the end of the show. Any feedback, anything you'd like me to cover, then do let me know and I'll do my best to accommodate. So, okay, before I go any further though, let's just remind you of the Science of Being Seen presentation. I'm going to be running, if I get enough demand, I'll be running monthly live presentations. First Wednesday of every month is in the schedule at the moment. The link to this is actually in the header for the piece on Facebook, but I'll just put it up again. It can be found here, and the next one will be Science of Being Seen presentation. There's a modest charge of £5 to help cover the costs of actually researching this and actually writing it all. So if you want to come along and find out all about the Science of Being Seen, it's a presentation which has been used by most of the biker down courses in the country for the Module 3 presentation up until last year when COVID struck, of course, and all the biker downs went on hold. So this is the original presentation. It's the fully updated one, and it's the full presentation too. Right, so, okay. What do we got for you today? Well, the first bit of news is that the DVSA have consulted on some changes to the driving tests. The first bit of it is actually about the way licenses for other vehicles pulling trailers is concerned. So just to cover that very short, quickly, if you've got a manual license for a car, lorry or bus, and you will now get a manual and an automatic license if you take a test towing a trailer in an automatic. So that affects car and trailer, medium-sized lorry and trailer, medium-sized a minibus and a trailer too. So basically they acknowledge that if you can drive a manual in one mode, you can handle a manual in the other. So that's good news for people waiting to take car tests and trailer tests. Of rather more interest to motorcyclists, though, is the minimum test vehicle requirement for motorcycles that are used for the A2 rider test. Now, they are to be reduced from 395 cc's, which it is now, down to 245 cc's. And that's provided that other minimum test vehicle requirements are still met. Now, basically what that means is a power output of at least 20 kilowatts, which is roughly 27 horsepower, up to 35 kilowatts, or which is just under 47 horsepower. And there must also be a power to weight ratio not exceeding 0.2 kilowatts per kilogram. And finally, the motorcycle must not be restricted from a machine of more than double its power. Now, effectively, what this does is it opens up a whole new range of smaller motorcycles to the test. But the really good news is that, as well as the more expensive twin-cylinder bikes like the MT-03 and the Z300 Ninja from Kawasaki and Yamaha, or the other way around, of course, really, isn't it? A lot of single-cylinder models, BMW's G310, KTM's 390 Duke, and the Kawasaki Z250 SL will all meet those new regulations. Now, as singles are nearly always lighter and a bit cheaper than the bigger twins, it should make the bike tester even more accessible to vertically challenged riders, and it should make the cone dodging bit of the Module 1 test a little bit easier too. Now, not everybody is entirely in favour of this. Some trainers believed that the move would actually mean they had to double up on their existing A2 machines because they would need to add these smaller and lighter bikes to their training fleet. But to me, it seems like the opposite is true, because there's no need to change them right away. You just basically replace your existing fleet when you need to. And you, of course, if you can source a less costly model to do that, the training school will actually help to keep their costs down, which will help trainees, of course, because it won't need to be covered in the fees that are charged for training. That's another worry that some schools had, is that the closeness of a 125 and a 250 in size and power output will actually encourage some trainees to skip post-CB training altogether. So what they would do would be simply buy the bigger machine themselves, get a friend to deliver it to the test centre, stick old plates on it down there, and then take the test and hopefully ride it home at the end of the session. Now, that's actually always been an option for direct access. An American friend of mine, in fact, did exactly that. He rode his VFR 750 down to the test centre on his US licence, then stuck old plates on it at the test centre and presented his provisional UK licence to the examiner. However, insurance has often been a problem, with insurance companies often reluctant to cover learners on a bike which technically they can't ride except in front of the examiner. Another possibility is that that was mooted by some of these training schools was that it would be moving backwards in terms of safety, just as the old system was you took your test on a 125 and then jumped on anything. The argument here is that, again, you're moving to a lighter, less powerful machine, which isn't so directly connected with the kind of bike that you're likely to ride after you've passed your test. Although I have to say that the safety implications of jumping from a sort of 27 horsepower bike to a 47 horsepower bike, which is the maximum you can ride on an A2 license, is rather less dramatic than the old take a test on a 125, ride off on a GSX-R 1100, which did happen. One trainee of mine actually had his bike delivered to the training school on the day that he took his test, and he did actually ride off on this 1100. Anyway, so it's a reasonable concern, and there certainly are options. You could, for instance, take your test on that Z250 single and then go and buy a bike like the GSX S950, which you may recall I talked about last week. It's a detuned version of the GSX S1000, and it's aimed squarely at the tiered license system that operates in Europe, because the bike produces exactly twice the 35 kilowatt limit for the A2 license, so it can legally be restricted down to that 47 horsepower license limit. And as I mentioned last week, Suzuki said the selling point for the machine is it's a switchable restriction, so that A2 license holders can actually upgrade their bike just simply by changing or removing the restriction on it when they pass their full A test. So they don't need to buy a new motorcycle. Now, I have to say, I do think that a motorcycle that size and weight would be a bit of a handful for a new rider initially, even with the power restriction in place. But I doubt, frankly, that many A2 license holders would be going that sort of 250 to 950 route. I would imagine many more will be aiming for something rather less expensive and rather more similar to what they trained on. But as with all all these comments of mine, I do wait to be proven wrong. Now, it is important to say these changes still need to be written into law, so they're not active yet, but it's expected that the new regulations will be in place sometime in the new year. Now, the Motorcycle Action Group, MAG, have issued their initial response to the government's Transport Decarbonisation Plan, which proposes the requirement for all new motorcycles and scooters is that they are zero emissions at the tailpipe from 2035. Now, you'll recall that this plan to include motorcycles in zero emissions was announced last week, and it sets in place how future carbon emissions from the transport sector will be tackled on the UK's path to net zero emissions by 2050. Now, not too surprisingly, the MAG statement begins by saying that the organisation remains opposed to compulsion as a solution to reducing carbon emissions. Whilst MAG acknowledges the need to reduce the harmful impacts of transport, they do argue for what they call a modal shift to motorcycles as a significant lever for achieving that aim. And they'll say they are pleased to see that stated in the plan. However, the Riders' Rights Organisation is also concerned that a technological roadmap for motorcycles has yet to be fully developed. So MAG are therefore urging the government to listen to all voices in the forthcoming consultation with consideration and support for a wide range of potential solutions. Now, it doesn't take a crystal ball to see that many of the MAG membership will want the organisation to fight long and hard to keep the internal combustion engine going as a power two-wheeler option for some considerable time yet. So it'll be interesting to see how MAG deal with that within their organisation and whether they can actually encourage riders to think about changing to electric motorcycles. Right, morning, Nigel. Good of you to look in. So, okay, don't forget, if you are watching the show live, that's great. If you can't watch it live, you can catch up. It is on YouTube on my Survival Skills UK channel, and of course you can always catch up here on Facebook too. Right, so okay, next story. Years ago, I actually crashed on a wet road surface and managed to break an arm. I was collected by an ambulance which ambled off slowly towards Maidstone General Hospital while I was treated to a cheery monologue from the attendant about how many of the motorcyclists they picked up from the roadside were DOA, as he put it, dead on arrival, by the time the ancient vehicles had chugged their way down the A20 to the hospital. Nevertheless, my main concern was not my survival. I didn't think I was about to drop dead, but it was actually my bike, my treasured, not very old 404 Honda, which I'd had to abandon at the scene of the spill. Now, after many hours sitting in casualty, nothing much has changed there then. I was discharged with a sling and not a cast. It turned out to be the kind of fracture you can't treat with a cast. So I got a lift back next morning and I collected the bike from the nearby householder who'd actually tucked it behind his hedge, which was very nice of him. And I was able to ride the bike home. But not everyone is so lucky. And just the other day, a case was heard at South Tyneside Law Courts after a man tried to push a bike away. It belonged to a woman who'd been taken to hospital after she was involved in a collision. Scott Donaldson, 27, had apparently been told about the abandoned bike by a pal. However, he only got 200 meters from the accident scene before a police car pulled up to see where he was going with it. Seems the officer knew that the bike belonged to the woman who'd had the accident. So he began to push it back again, but it appears he was arrested anyway, then charged with theft after admitting he would otherwise have swiped it permanently. Prosecutor Sarah Malkinson told magistrates in South Tyneside he said he had taken it to use for himself and that his intention was to use it. Despite his defence solicitor's plea, there was no loss to the lady. The vehicle was recovered. The jobless Donaldson was sentenced to a 12-month conditional discharge, £85 court costs and a £22 victim surcharge. After the court heard, he had learning difficulties, but also 6 previous convictions from 8 offences, including a motorbike theft in 2012. There's one small part of the story I didn't fully understand. It states that the vehicle was recovered by the RAC but left at the roadside. So that clearly wasn't a recovery in the sense that I would understand it, as in being taken back to the owner's home. So I suspect it was simply rolled out of the road and wheeled onto the pavement and parked. Now, you may be aware that I've been somewhat surprised by the sales success of the new Royal Enfield 650 models. When I've been reporting sales numbers for bikes in the UK, they've consistently been in the top 10 over the last couple of years. Now, first launched in 2018, the duo of retro style machines, let's see if I can get a picture of one up. Yes, there it is. Have been both affordable, they've been retro styled, and they've garnered a massive following. So that's the Interceptor 250 and the Continental GT 650. And somewhat again to my surprise, Royal Enfield has just been crowned as the top selling middleweight motorcycle brand in terms of sales in New Zealand. So this market segment consists of bikes between 250 and 1000 cc, and they basically knocked the industry giants off the top spot. And in their official press release, Royal Enfield have stated that there is a remarkable brand affinity to its charming retro style bikes which cater for all types of rider. Vimal Sumbli, who's the Asia Pacific head of business at Royal Enfield, expressed his excitement towards the achievement. We're absolutely delighted to have become the #1 mid-size motorcycling brand in New Zealand. Royal Enfield has intently focused on growing and leading the middleweight segment market across the world and becoming a truly global motorcycling brand. We've consistently grown our network, reach, product, apparel, range and offerings to appeal to the customers. And they say they've received great love from enthusiasts in Australia and New Zealand alike. And here is a little teaser for you. There are rumours that there is about to appear a bigger Enfield Himalayan. You may recall that the Royal Enfield Himalayan, as it exists at the moment, is powered by a single-cylinder 400cc bike. And again, it's an engine which is much modernised, compared with the sort of the old impression of the Enfield Bullet, and it's also sold well. There's quite a few of them around, but the new one would be powered using this same 650 twin power plant. So I suspect that could be a very, very interesting machine indeed. Right, quick sip of tea before I start coughing. Guy says, sorry you're late. Don't apologise, Guy. You can catch up at any time. It's good to see you here. So, apart from apart from Enfield, they're building their twins and doing very well with them. It seems that the new inline 4 is actually a triple. So after years when three-cylinder bikes were more or less unobtainable, more and more manufacturers are actually developing motorcycles using this engine configuration. I probably remember that the reborn Triumph Mark led the way. MV followed a decade or so later. Benelli chipped in with their Tornado, and then Yamaha brought out their own range of triples. Their first since the 1970s, and the XS 750, and the MT-09 launched 8 years ago. And now to join them, along come Benelli and Zontes. They're both developing their own three-cylinder bikes. Now, Benelli have a long heritage. They're over 100 years old as a brand. They've got a successful race history. I actually used to know my former pub landlord down in Kent was actually a former Benelli Grand Prix rider, believe it or not. But since 2005, the brand's been manufactured and owned in China. Dear me. I should have taken an antihistamine this morning. Just who owns it is actually complex because there are several subgroups involved. The bike itself is being developed by QJ Motor, who are in part owned by the Jiang Motor Group, who in turn come under the Geely umbrella. Now, if you've never heard of them, they actually own Volvo and Lotus. So some of the top brands that we think of as European are actually owned by the Chinese. And Benelli's long-awaited GT 1200, of which I do have a picture here when I stopped choking to death. There it is. It's now on sale in China, and at a price that actually massively undercuts similarly spec rivals such as the BMW R1250 RT, the Tracer 900 GT from Yamaha, and Kawasaki's Concourse 14. The bike's actually priced at £11,000 on the Chinese market, which makes it a top-end machine there, but still significantly less than imported rivals. Now, the 1209cc motor is apparently based on the 899 triple that powered the Benelli Tornado Tre 900 in the early 2000s, but it is more than just a sort of big bore kit. It is actually massively reworked. And one of the big changes has been to give the engine plenty of torque, 89 pounds-feet at a lowly 6,500 RPM. And the idea is to give it the mid-range pulling power that the rider of a Tourer would hope for. And that's probably far more important than the 134 horsepower figure for the big Tourer that you can see there. You should still get a top speed of around 140, but that should be plenty for most people. You also get a battery of features. There are a sort of a range of lights up front. You get an inbuilt audio system. You get heated bars and a seat, electrically adjustable windshield, folding mirrors, a tyre pressure monitoring system is standard, height adjustable seat, and power locking for your luggage compartments. Just in case you can't actually put a key in and twist it yourself. Of course, this all comes at expense, and the expense here is less the purchase price than the weight. The machine actually weighs in at something over £600. So some decent brakes and suspensions are must, and the Benelli actually features radially mounted Brembo brakes, Bosch cornering ABS, as well as adjustable KYB forks and rear monoshock. So it's pretty well spec'd in the brakes and suspension department. Other fiddly bits. Well, you get cameras front and rear, which can be displayed on a huge 15-inch TFT display. I'm not quite sure why you would want a forward-facing camera. And if you've got a rear-facing camera, that kind of begs the question, why are there also mirrors? You also get a gear position indicator, temperature, the tire pressure display, and a navigation system, and the obligatory USB port to charge your phone. The only thing that seems to be missing from the machine is actually shaft drive. The bike retains the chain drive of the original Tornado engine. Right now it's Chinese market only, but Benelli may have a relatively low profile here in the UK, but in Italy it's a very different matter, and the company sits actually top of the sales charts. Currently the TRK 502 is actually the nation's best-selling bike, outstripping the second place bike, which is the BMW 1250 GS, by a margin of 3-2 in 2021. So it's not hard to see the Benelli GT being launched in Italy, and if it comes to Italy, it's probably going to turn up in the rest of Europe. Now, another Chinese brand, which is better known for selling small capacity and inexpensive machines here in the UK, is also set to move into the large multi-cylinder market, and that is Zontes. They've revealed plans for a range of 3-cylinder bikes, which are expected to power naked and adventure models. Zontes is just one brand owned by the much larger Tao company, which also sells other bikes under different names in China. So the theory is that Zontes is being repositioned into the sort of larger capacity segment of the market that will be probably exported worldwide. And the company is reported to be working on a pair of engines in both 650 and 1000cc displacement. And here is a picture of one of the motors. So, okay. The overall design is not dissimilar to the MT-09 Yamaha in both structure and layout, but it is a completely new in-house design. So it's not like some of the older Japanese engines which have been sort of copied nut for nut by the Chinese. This is actually a genuine production in-house. Zontes say they've been working hard on the balance of the engine to ensure it's smooth running, and people looking at that picture have suggested that it almost certainly features a balancer shaft as well. The claims are that it will be a particularly high compression ratio, however. The up to 13.5 to 1. And there's also talk of a more complex valve train, something very similar to what's used on World Superbike engines. And that will allow for higher performance than Yamaha's motors. Zontes claim that the new motor will actually have more power and more torque than 80% of 1000cc inline fours. So there will also be a 650 model, which is likely, of course, to compete head-on with the Triumph Trident 660, which, as you probably know, is also not produced in the UK anymore. So, okay, exciting times. Lots of Chinese motorcycles appearing, filling the hole, I suspect, between now and 2035, when we won't be buying any more petrol-engined bikes, or at least not petrol-engine bikes as we know them. Martin has said there was a 600cc limit when he lived in China. Are you sure it has changed? Well, all I can say to that is that these bikes are actually on sale in China, so yes, presumably it must have done, Martin. I know that some cities ban anything except electric motorcycles, but presumably there is a market for them, or they wouldn't be building them. Anyway, that's just about it for today's webcast. But before I sign off, don't forget that as well as the genuinely client-centered advanced training that I deliver, Survival Skills also offers all sorts of low-cost or even free better biking resources. You can head over to my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Survival Skills UK. Don't forget that all-important UK on the end of it, or you won't find the channel. And you can get all the previous episodes of Elevenses over there. But you can also pick up the 60-second safety series of videos, just 1 minute long. There are over 40 of them now, and each concentrate on one aspect of motorcycling. And if you want something to read, then you can head over to my Ko-fi page. There are plenty of free things to read over there, but for just £3 a month, the price for coffee, basically, you can open up the entire Facebook archive, which goes back to 2014. Right now, I'm in the middle of putting the 2018 posts up, but even so, there are around 500 articles to read over there. So if you enjoy that, that's great. And finally, you can also check out my books, which you can order from my Lulu page. Right, so that is it for today. The next show is scheduled for Sunday. It's likely to be a recorded show, as I'm probably going to be away for a couple of days, but I'll let you know that closer to the date. So thanks very much again for watching, and stay safe out there on the roads. Bye for now.